Back here on CBS Sports HQ, Bud Elliot here in studio. Brad Crawford joining us remotely. We're going to do our best to predict what the committee will do on Tuesday night. By we, I mean Brad. Brad, walk us through what you think this bracket will look like come Tuesday.
Yeah, I think for the most part, Emily, we're going to see chalk because there wasn't a ton of upset results here in Week 13. However, I do think Oregon's nationally ranked win over USC, considering USC was 15th last week, might be enough to push Oregon to that 6th spot where Ole Miss was last heard. So I spoke to a committee source this past week and just asked them this whole Lane Kiffin speculation stuff and is it going to affect Ole Miss. They assured me if Ole Miss beats Mississippi State, Ole Miss is in the playoff. However, if Lane Kiffin goes to LSU and takes some coordinators with him, then you may see some seeding changes. And right now, Tuesday night, this is the first opportunity for the committee to sort of boost Oregon's resume after that ranked win against USC and sort of sub Ole Miss down a spot after being open. So that's the major change this week, and I still think the committee believes Miami is its projected ACC champion despite just a crazy amount of scenarios that need to go the Hurricanes' way.
What do you think about this bracket?
So I think it's first of all, Brad, I think pretty much nailed this whole thing. Like, he does a great job with this. I do think the likelihood of a coordinator leaving with Lane right now, if he were to take the LSU job, is low. You don't really need a coordinator on campus in January, right? No plays are being called. No real install of the offense or defense really is being done at that time. You could send some analysts along with him. And also, like, if you're the agent of that coordinator, you're like, dude, you have a shot to either be the interim coach or be like the primary coordinator on the other side of whoever the interim would be, whether it's Golding or Joe Judge for Ole Miss. That's great exposure for you in your career. So I think if you're a coordinator, like, Lane, if you want me, you'll wait a month. I'm going to go coach this team in the playoffs. So I think the coordinator scenario is certainly, I'm glad Brad explained that. I don't know how likely that actually is, right?
Yeah, and that's something that won't necessarily go into play until next bracket reveal, which is the final bracket reveal. But if we go back to what we think is going to happen on Tuesday, Brad, I'm curious, you mentioned that debate between 6 and 7 with Ole Miss and Oregon. Not that big of a difference in terms of seeding there. There is a big difference, though, between 5 and 6. So what do you think that conversation will be like between Texas Tech and Oregon now with that signature win over USC?
Yeah, for me right now, Emily, judging by what the committee has told us and shown us through these first 3 top 25s, they love Texas Tech. Game control is obviously a metric that we've seen have a heavy emphasis in 2025, maybe not as much in previous years, but that is the one thing that we hear, including record strength, week to week. And Texas Tech right now has some great dominant wins. Like you've said, it matters who you've beaten. And margin of victory, I know it's not supposed to be incentivized, but we've seen this season that is the case with this committee. I think Texas Tech right now is sort of planted into that 5 seed, and if they beat BYU in 2 weeks by 3 or 4 touchdowns in the Big 12, there's your chance for Joey McGuire's Red Raiders to move into that top 4.
But like I said, it seems like the committee is very infatuated with these good losses, and Oregon has a much better loss than Texas Tech. So what do you think that conversation will look like?
I think it's going to be interesting. I agree with Brad. It's probably like the magnitude of the win, right? So Oregon will not be playing on Conference Championship weekend, most likely. There is still some chance that they do make it in, but that would involve Michigan beating Ohio State and some other things happening. So I think, how badly does Texas Tech beat BYU or whoever they play in the Conference Championship game is likely to carry the day. Also, that 4 seed is really going to depend, I think, on who wins the SEC. If Bama beats Auburn, Bama is going to the SEC title game because mathematically they're in. They're winning in at this point. If they then win the SEC championship game, I think they get the 3 seed. Which then, would you really place the loser of the SEC championship game below another SEC team? I think that's doubtful. So a lot of that's going to depend on what happens in Atlanta.
So, Brad, just to make it easy, do we anticipate those top 4 seeds to likely be the participants in the Big Ten championship or the SEC?
I think they will be. I think Alabama's going to go to Jordan-Hare Saturday night and beat Auburn. 4.5-point favorite right now. This is a huge game for Kalen DeBoer. He can nick some of that Penn State, speculation and rumors right now. Just go win the Iron Bowl and plant yourself in Atlanta that following weekend. And obviously Texas A&M's case. I mean, we haven't spoke the scenario about what happens if Texas beats the Aggies, how far does Texas A&M fall out of that top 4? Because they won't be a top 4 team anymore if they don't get to Atlanta and lose to Texas next weekend.
Yeah, there's still a lot to be decided in this season. Brad, we appreciate you doing this exercise for us. Our friends at Sportsline, though, have projected what they think the final college football playoff bracket will look like. So you should check them out. And how about this? You get 60% off an annual plan. All you got to do is use the promo code WINNERS. So scan now to check out Sportsline. I don't know how we got here, guys, but it's officially the final week of the regular season. What is on the line and who needs to win to get into the postseason? So many games of consequence. But these are the headliners here. You got the Lone Star State Showdown, A&M versus Texas. The game, of course, Ohio State, Michigan. We've got some Volunteer State pride on the line. And, oh, yeah, a playoff berth for the Doors in Knoxville, potentially. And, of course, the Iron Bowl. Let's start, though, with the game. And, Brad, what would a Michigan win do for the Big Ten in terms of college football playoff implications?
Yeah, it's going to torch a lot of these projected brackets that Bud and I have made over the last few months. I mean, it's going to be crazy if Ryan Day goes to Ann Arbor and loses for a 5th consecutive season to a Wolverines team that, let's face it, it's pretty good this season. But Ohio State's in a different tier right now, different level with Julian Sayin, Heisman front runner. They've been resting wideouts in preparation for this game. But if Michigan wins and then gets some help, they're going to make the Big Ten championship game. And I know that loss to USC earlier this season sort of spiked we're not going back to the playoff. Well, here's your opportunity to get back in that conversation. I know Bud has kind of mentioned that through his model, if Michigan wins this game, he does see Michigan getting to the playoff. That's going to knock some of those 10-win at-large teams out of the mix. So right now, Michigan's firmly on the bubble, but in a pretty good position right now if you can beat Ohio State next weekend.
So just to follow up on that, what I did this morning, I used like a devigging model on the FanDuel number. So if we assume FanDuel's numbers and the market is somewhat efficient in the process, if Michigan beats Ohio State, this FanDuel model actually gives them an 89.8% chance to make the playoff. So the Big Ten would get 4 teams in, most likely, if they do beat the Buckeyes.
So the rest of college football is rooting against this, but the
Absolutely.
Big Ten might actually be rooting for this in this instance. So that would be very interesting. I'll also add Ohio State and Michigan will both meet as ranked opponents for the 50th time. That is the most of any rivalry in college football. Elsewhere, more rivalries. That's what we get on rivalry weekend. This one's got a lot of stakes, though. So what happens if the Longhorns beat Texas A&M?
I think for A&M, it's more of a seeding issue. I think they probably would drop past the 4 spot, given that Texas, it has 3 losses already. If Texas makes it in, again, I just ripped the FanDuel numbers. Who knows if these are like totally efficient? It's a Sunday morning, so the betting markets have not fully matured yet at this point in the week, given low limits. But if they beat if they beat Texas A&M, actually give them about a 3% chance to make it.
As a 3-loss team.
Still a huge long shot.
Okay, Brad, what do you think?
Yeah, Texas has to get to number 10 in this final poll, and I just don't know if a win over A&M is going to be enough to do that with 3 losses. They could potentially hop Vanderbilt. I know they have that head-to-head win, not going to have as good a record as Vanderbilt if the Commodores beat Tennessee, but they could argue that maybe they're playing better down the stretch. Miami, Utah, you're going to need losses from those teams. But a 9-3 Texas team, would it get in over a 2-loss BYU for one of those last spots in? I'm just not sure. I know Texas's strength of schedule is obviously better than BYU, but we're talking about both of BYU's losses this season being to a top 5 Texas Tech team. So look, the loss at Florida about 6 weeks ago for Steve Sarkisian, that's the fly in the ointment. It's not the game against Ohio State. It's not the loss at Georgia 2 weeks ago. It's losing to a bad Gators team before they fired their head coach. And so I just think Texas at 9-3, even with a win over the Aggies, there's no path to getting the playoff.
Brad, you've been on the Iron Bowl for quite some time as a potential chaos game. So what could happen in this one?
Well, what could happen is Alabama fails the show, Deuce Knight puts on a show for the Tigers, and Alabama's out of the playoff. I think if Auburn wins this game Saturday night at Jordan-Hare Stadium, then it's going to be bad news for Alabama. Right now, they're my last team in with 10 wins. If Alabama wins, obviously they're going to the SEC championship game to play Texas A&M. But Alabama has to get a ground game going, has not had it throughout the season. We heard the interim committee chair say last week, part of the reason Bama fell so many spots after that loss to Oklahoma is because they have not shown dominance at the line of scrimmage. We saw Ty Simpson. He's starting to make some errant throws late in the year that we did not see his first 7 or 8 starts this season. So this is a must-win game for Alabama. You know, I don't think a month ago we thought the Iron Bowl would have major implications like it does next weekend.
I agree with Brad here. Honestly, Bama is the team with the greatest potential variance. And like they could go from not making it all the way up, I think in some models, to the 3 seed if they win the SEC. And no other team out there right now, at least in my projections, has that wide of a range of potential outcomes.
That's crazy. All right, real quick. Is a win enough for Vanderbilt in Knoxville to get them into the playoff? This is that would be a 10-2 team in the SEC.
My opinion, no. Ripping the FanDuel numbers, though, if they beat Tennessee, FanDuel would give them a 48% chance to make it. So a true coin flip if they beat Tennessee. If they kill Tennessee, obviously that goes up. Tennessee looked pretty good against Florida yesterday, so I think like winning by a huge number in Neyland is unlikely.
Brad, what do you think?
I just don't see who Vanderbilt is going to jump despite finishing 10-2 with a ranked win over Tennessee. Miami, a team right ahead of Vanderbilt right now, also has a ranked team next week against Pitt. If Miami beats Pitt 45-14, there's no way Vanderbilt, after a win over Tennessee, is going to jump Miami. You also need Notre Dame, and then Alabama, and then BYU, and then Utah. There's just too many teams right now on that bubble, and Vanderbilt in that 14 spot. They need to somehow move up Tuesday night to maybe 12 to have a real shot at this, and I just don't see it happening.
Well, they're going to need some help. Style points would certainly help, but they might have used all those points against Kentucky yesterday.
Already used all the style points on the board.
Right? Yes. So whatever it takes. We appreciate both of you guys breaking that down for us. Thank you so much. And make sure that you are listening to the Cover 3 podcast. Bud, is there an emergency episode for Norvell or? There is. Okay, so you see the sirens in your feed, go check it out. But of course, the Upon Further Review coming up tomorrow. If you missed the recap show last night, they got lots of podcasts in your feed. So scan that QR code and listen wherever you find your podcasts.